Okay, so, all right. First of all, if you've seen the Patreon post, it's showing the swatch sideways. This is the swatch right side up. I don't know what's up with that picture. Anyway, I almost didn't do the swatch. I have an earlier live video where I talked about gauge is no laughing matter, so you should check that out to hear my thoughts about swatching. I originally wasn't going to swatch because I didn't feel like it, to be completely honest with you. I'm tired of waiting. I want to get started on this. And while this is a gorgeous yarn, that just means I want to get started on it even more. So my gauge is actually a little bit smaller than the aforementioned gauge. So I have 9 stitches in the 4-inch instead of 8.5. And I feel like half an inch just really isn't going to matter that much. It does add up, but the dimensions are big enough that I think it'll be fine. So there you go. And actually, I can quickly do the math. I haven't done it yet, but I can absolutely check the math and confirm that it's not going to be a big deal because I understand the construction of the shrug that I'm going to be making. It's basically a giant rectangle that's got parts of the sides sewn together. And so, however wide that rectangle is, that's how wide the shrug is going to be. So it's super easy math. And that math and knowing things are going to fit and be the right size, that's the whole reason that you do gauge. It's the entire reason, is to meet size requirements or considerations. So, just for you to see, this is the pattern. It is called Decisiveness Scoop Shrug Sweater, which is kind of a mouthful. I actually found this randomly on Ravelry. I don't know when or where. I just was looking. So maybe I found it on a yarn website. Actually, I'm not sure, but I love it. I think it's really fun. I don't want to wear it. I'm actually making this for someone else. But I'm fascinated with the kind of cozy little outline it makes, and it sounds really exciting. So, a few things before we get started. I want to give you a few tips. So, like I said, gauge is important. If you don't want to do gauge, I mean, that's fine, but you're basically playing Russian roulette with your project about whether it's going to work out, if it's going to be big enough, if it's going to be the right size, and you're also going to be surprised by whatever the drape of the finished fabric is, because making a gauge swatch can also give you that information. So, buyer beware, always swatch, because it's just a better idea. And when you swatch, you need to use the tools that you're going to be using to make it. For some reason, I've seen people say, oh, I'll just grab any old needle, and it's not the needle or the crochet hook that they're going to use for the pattern by the way of material or whatever, and that's going to be a problem because your gauge is going to be off. And again, little bits can add up. Another helpful thing, and I can show you this, if you don't have a long enough cable, which I don't, all my cables are used up right now, you can take this right here. This is a connector, and so between my fingertips is an additional middle piece. And you can take that connector and you can put 2 cables together and get whatever size cable you need. So that is super neat. And this is standard in most interchangeables I've seen. And these particular are the Lickus. And the color is Driftwood. They're size 15s, which is what the pattern calls for. And one last little thing before I get into this. Super helpful thing, always read through the pattern. I actually just about had a major faux pas because I realized there was a mistake in the pattern. Mind you, I have read this pattern several times, looked at the thing, and thought something looked a little odd, but just said, okay, I'm just misreading it. So read it carefully and slowly and ask questions. So, spoiler alert, this is what happened. The measurements for inches are given. The measurements for centimeters are not. And 2.54 centimeters is 1 inch, I think. Yeah. So, however that works out, there's a significant difference in the size. 45 centimeters versus 45 inches, not even close to the same. And so that turns out to be that I actually bought way more yarn than I needed, which means I get to return some of the yarn, which is good that I didn't wind it all up. So without further ado, we're going to get started. I will be making the size small. So this is an experiment. This is basically a test knit for me, not for the pattern designer, but I'm just testing it. I haven't done it before. And so I'm going to go with the size that I think will work best. And if it doesn't work, then I will adjust it. Because it'll be my mistake, not the recipient's mistake. They gave me the accurate information and I'm going to hope that it works out. But because of the simplicity of this design, it should be really easy to alter it if necessary. So first things first, we're going to cast on. Now there's no cast on given specific to this pattern, so it's just long tail, which is what I'm going to use because it's just really easy to use. I'm going to get a bunch of yarn out though. Bunch of yarn. Because I have to cast on for the small 83 stitches. So let's see. I know when I cast on, I cast on 16 earlier and this was just barely enough. So this should be enough. Okay. And I try to be as conservative as I can when it comes to casting on this way, but it doesn't always work. Now, I did consider doing another type of cast on because you do sew some of this together, but I decided against that because you didn't sew all of the sides together, and it didn't make sense to have live stitches out. Oh, okay, well, there goes the cake. It's gonna just join me. And I've worked this with this yarn before. I actually have a design that I have in the works that uses this yarn because it was super pretty. And I'm not even remotely counting my stitches right now because I'm talking to you, but that's okay. What I'm going to end up doing is in a few minutes I will count, see where we are, and then keep going if necessary. Alright, I already know I'm basically playing chicken with the amount that I've got. So I'm going to try and get as many stitches as I can, and hopefully I will not have to redo this. And so one thing I don't like about the long tail cast on is that sometimes the tail is not long enough because you don't want a super short end because that actually makes it harder to weave in the end. Although I like to live dangerously and do that anyway. And I could switch to a different cast on method to just like if I just needed 1 or 2 more stitches, but generally I don't, I just go and add more. Okay, so we're going to count these real quick. Oh, unfortunately, we only have 66. I need, like I said, 83. So what we'll do is we will just pull all of these off. And there's some other cast-ons like the cable cast-on where you can cast on a different way. And there's reasons to use different cast-ons. Like different cast-ons are, certain ones are really good for certain nieces. The long tail is very simple and kind of an old faithful for a lot of knitters. So, and it's a lot of times one of the first ones that she wanted to use. So we're gonna stick that. Well, it's gonna fall on the floor. That's cool. That is cool. And take all this apart. And yeah, this is what happens, right? You know, a lot of the time you see a finished object and you forget like that mistakes are made or restarts are necessary. This should be enough right here. Okay, so the first thing I'm doing is I'm making a slip knot. Okay, in case you wanted to see. There are a few ways to make a slip knot. That is just how I do it. And if it functions like it's supposed to, then it works. So I'm going to take a brief break real quick. There we go. Woo! Knock everything over! Oh, this cake is determined to sit on the floor, so that's just where it's going to sit. That's probably one too many. Okay, so that's not too bad a tail left over. A little longer than I'd like, but I'm going to go ahead and again, real quickly, double check this. All right, so what do we get here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Super important. We don't want these twisted. All right. Okay, so I feel like I must have miscounted. So I'm going to count again. I'm like that. I am conscientious to a fault to make sure I don't mess up. Let's see, it is hot in here. So turn off the space heater. All right, so let's try this again. So apparently I had shorted myself a couple of stitches. This should be right. So we're at 83. And now I can get started. Woo! Started! So like I said, I'm using a really long circular. It looks like I probably could have gotten away with using one of these and it just, the stitches would be more like this while it was being worked, which is fine. That doesn't bother me. But move on, and depending on how quickly I can get through a row will depend on how much we end up doing. I don't want to keep everyone on here too long. Also, this is just like a weird angle for me to be sitting at, by the way. Let's see. Okay. So, and I'm going to be honest, I'm going to compulsory count one more time, because to be off that many stitches one time and not the other seemed really wrong and weird. So one more time. 2, 4, 6, 10. Okay, yes, that is right now. Woo! Confidence and starting now. So one of the things I like to do when I have a longer tail like this is I like to wrap it. It's basically called a butterfly. And you just wrap it like this. And then you get to a point. And then wrap it around and around. And this essentially keeps the yarn out of the way, but also neat. And this is not a demo per se, so I can do a demo if somebody wants me to. But then you have this nice little parcel, right? And it'll stay out of the way. And that keeps me from accidentally working over that tail, because that's no good. So, and now on to the first row. I'm going to go ahead and squinch some of these stitches down so they're ready. And after I've worked, after you work the first row, whatever this cast on looks like, it's going to get a little bigger. So if you're going to change needles, like the cable lengths, do it after you've knit a few rows versus like from the get-go, because the cast on is always going to look a bit smaller. Oh no, and it looks like there is a knot in this yarn, which is undesirable, but it's not a big deal. A lot of people do not like this at all, but I don't let it really be a problem. It's like, well, it's there. I'm just trying to make sure that I tuck it to the wrong side, so then it's not as noticeable, or hide it in the stitches if possible. That weird creaking sound is I might have done my cast on a little too tight, and that's okay. Working this first row will sort that out. And if you're concerned about making mistakes when you're doing seed stitch or any other stitch pattern, learning to read your knitting is super handy to avoid that. know I have to get to the last 7. It seems like I might have made a mistake, so we'll take that one off there. So that is a knit. So this is supposed to be a purl and a knit. And we're down to the last 7, and this one is supposed to be a purl, so that is right. Hooray! And as you can see, the fabric is stretched out a bit. So what I know from this is, let's see, where's the cable? That's right about there. That means that this is the longer side over here. So I can look at this and see the connector is right about here, which means I could probably do with this size connector. And what I will likely do is after I finish this video, I'll go ahead and shorten the cable, so it's a little less unwieldy. But for the purposes of this, I won't worry about it just yet. And so let's see, row 2 is basically working in line with the first row. And after row 2, I'll go ahead and call it quits for this video, continue working on it. So, let's see, this is All right, so here we go. We've got 2 rows done. And you can see it's this nice little kind of ribbed. There's this stitch and this stitch. And it's got an interesting kind of denim-y look, I think. But I have about 1 billion more to do. I have to do basically the pattern of the top, then the body for the length it needs to be, and then the same pattern will be repeated on the bottom. So there you go, there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this and that it was informative. And stay tuned for my work in progress Wednesdays and perhaps future project times or a finished object Friday, where I will share more of this. My goal really actually is to have it done before Friday of next week, so we'll see how that works out. And until that, happy knitting!